All right, everybody, welcome to the Creator Podcast. My name's Evan Dvorkin. I'm here with Joel Hurd. He's going to throw it to our guest in a second, but this is our first guest appearance podcast. This is also the first one we're recording, so you'll be able to find this on YouTube. Check out the show notes after the podcast is live. We'll also be posting on all of our social channels. I Am a Creator Podcast. You can find it anywhere from Instagram to Twitter, Facebook, wherever you want to check us out. So go ahead, Joel.
So today we have Kevin Koa. He is a guitarist, songwriter, musician, singer, talented guy all around.
Don't add too many titles.
I only focus on a few titles.
Yeah.
I'm trying to fit in as many as I can.
I just don't want anybody to think too highly of me. So.
But we're here to learn about your experience as a musician, what brought you here, why you were inspired to choose this for a living, and maybe what advice you could give to people. So maybe you could start it with what led you to guitar and being a singer-songwriter and wanting to pursue that, as a career.
Yeah. Well, before we get into any of it, I have thought a lot about how to help people get into what I do specifically with it, just because I see a lot of opportunity for progress and advice. Some of the advice I still don't follow myself, but like the advice that could help people succeed in the markets that I'm in. So I'm super excited to talk about that specifically. But I guess just a short version as to like how I got into guitar and music itself is just being a musical person. I know, Joel, you are a musical person in general, and that probably permeates a lot of different instruments. And Evan, I don't know if you are a musician at all.
I don't play any instruments or anything
You're a
like that.
fan.
I'm a fan though.
Yeah,
I've taken. I was one of the same story. Like I've taken a bunch of instruments as a kid and tried them all, and like after like a few months, I was like, I'm not.
Yeah.
I wasn't picking up on it.
People that are fans, like I love those types of people. People that are musicians and they feel like they need to get it out. Like I understand those people, and sometimes they actually scare me a little bit. 'Cause, like I'm one of them. But people that just appreciate music, that's like a really pure relationship with it that I think is pretty cool. I'm one of those people, as Joel is, and a lot of other others out there that just have this urge to like get it out of us, and so I've always had that.
You saying I scare you?
Yes, yeah.
That's a different thing though.
Yeah, it's like
nothing to do
it's
with music.
cousins with respect. It's like they're right beside each other, fear and respect. And for sure, that was something that started with like piano and like percussion and always tapping on things and just banging on things and singing in the car and all that. And then at one point, it just manifested itself in guitar because it, in my opinion, was just more culturally applicable paintbrush to paint with. A lot of the music I liked had guitar, and a guitar was the type of instrument that a friend of mine, his parents could forget about in the basement, and that it found its way into my hands.
Yeah.
If we were a culture based on I don't know, like harp or something, I'm sure it would have been that.
I think the guitar probably makes it easier since you can carry it too.
Exactly.
You can't really strap a harp to your back.
It actually started with ukulele. So if we are going with convenience, then yes.
There you go. That's the most convenient one you could possibly pick out.
Yeah, I got a $20 ukulele from Walmart of all places, and I learned a bunch of songs on that. And then I was like,
Nice.
I'm gonna get a better ukulele. And then I was like, my friend's got a guitar, maybe I can like learn that. Hated guitar when I first started.
Was it easy to transition from ukulele to guitar? Was it similar principles?
Yeah, very similar chord patterns and everything. So
Yeah.
actually, a lot of people suggest that people learn from ukulele. So I found my way into that path just by, again, I think like the gears were already lubed through our like culture and the art that I appreciated, which is like rock music and 60s and 70s era, basically the coincidental art of those cultures, which was a lot of guitar. So I learned that, and it was really a great thing to keep me busy basically, and keep me out of trouble. And I didn't have a whole lot of friends when I was growing up, so I really dove into that. And I think I got like pretty confident on the guitar through college, and as soon as I graduated college, I found myself going to open mics and things like that,
Mm.
but I found myself as well kind of trying to enter a traditional job market through construction was actually the mode that I went. This dog is going to be the star of the show, man. This is great.
That's right.
Sidebar.
Lady is the star of most of our
Yeah.
podcasts. Eventually, she comes into all of them at some
I
point.
Right.
got you.
Yeah.
She never laid on me either. So
Yeah.
like I think she's just like hamming it up.
Yeah. For
Um,
anybody watching the video or not watching the video and listening to the podcast,
yeah.
we have Joel's dog Lady is rolling around the couch with us right now, just
Maybe they can
hanging.
like hear her like
Yeah, but if
heartbeat.
if you hear her panting into the
Yeah,
microphone,
Right, yeah,
yeah.
it's not just one
that's
of
a
us out of
possibility.
breath.
Right.
Yeah.
So I found myself going into a traditional job market, and then at the exact same time that I started to find a little bit of space inside of that traditional job market, I realized that all this time that I devoted to guitar and music and all of the leisure time and in kind of a way like therapeutic time that I spent just getting this out was also kind of reaching a point that I could apply those skills into the creative space and draw money out of that in the way of just performing in bars and restaurants and stuff. So that was kind of the point where things, I would say it was a crescendo in many ways and like a turning point was, going through this hazy period of learning something to finally hitting a point where you like it felt like I like hit like a cheat code in the Matrix. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Were you learning it thinking like maybe one day I'll make it a career, or were you just learning it because you're just passionate about it? You just want to learn.
yeah. My self confidence was through the floor, and now is just slightly above the floor. So it's not necessarily. It was never anything that seemed as though I could put in the forefront of my um, goal setting and I guess interface with reality and responsibilities and things.
Yeah.
Even though, as most musicians, most creative people in general would say that it does occupy so much of their mind, you
Uh,
know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember, first time I got paid for photography, I was like, oh shoot, I was like, I can like just do this. I was
Well,
like,
what was that like
uh,
event for you?
it was wild. I mean, it was such a small thing too. So my wife does digital marketing, so social media marketing. We had a client, it was a restaurant in Fells Point, so in Baltimore, and it was the Point down the road, which you
Hmm.
probably played at or you know of.
Yep.
And they were just a social media client of ours. And one time they had a new menu. I've always loved photography. I've always done video and photo and different things. I never got paid for it, and they needed new photos, and I was like, I'll do them. How about like $50? Like I was like, whatever. Like I'm happy to do it for you guys. They've been a client for a minute, and I did it, and then I got paid for it, and I was just
Hmm.
like, oh, I was like, all right, hold on a second.
Yeah,
I was like, so did you have one of those experiences too when you were
yeah.
like your first time getting paid? You're like, well, hang on.
Yeah. So I was working at the time at a spray foam insulation company, where I was like doing sales and project management for a growing insulation company. And I was really just hired because the person that I was working with was somebody that I met through music, and he was cool, and he
Yeah.
wanted to like just he wanted to work and help me to be in a cool company culture, but ultimately was not. I was not good at the job, so I knew at some point like I wanted to look for some lateral move or maybe inside of that very nuts and bolts industry or completely something else. But I just knew I was restless at the time. And then my dad spent a lot of time at a local restaurant during this time. And went, he talked to the owner and asked him, told him I'm a guitar player and I sing. And the owner said, "Oh, well, we have music on Fridays and we pay $100." So I went and I he like he told me, "Hey, you can play at this bar for $100." And I was like, "Whatever, Dad. Like, sure, sure, sure." Like, I didn't even know if he was like serious. He's like, "Yeah, this Friday, come play for $100." And I was like, Whatever." And
Yeah.
then it came to Thursday, and he was like, "Yeah, so you're coming tomorrow, right?" And I was like, Oh,
Are
you were
you
serious?
serious?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that type of thing. So I showed up late, like with like 10 minutes to set up, with like all I had was like some tiny little amplifier that I like also plugged a microphone into through like a Y connector, and this is a great drink holder, by the way. And
Joel's just precariously
yeah,
balancing
It's
his
empty,
drink
so
on
yeah,
on our audio source.
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
it's not. There's nothing in it.
So yeah, I showed up late and played a bunch of really, really obscure music that nobody knew, along with one cover that everybody knew.
Were they your songs or their songs that you liked?
They were songs that I liked. I think I had like a couple of original songs at that point, and so I played those too because I
Yeah.
was just like, I need to fill this 3 hours with music. I didn't even
It's a
know
long
that I
time,
could
yeah.
really take a break. Like,
Yeah.
like I just
You played straight through, start to finish?
no, I did take.
Okay.
I think the guy actually came up and was like, "Yo, let's take a break.
Just
You are sweating a
sweating.
lot." And yeah, just like a lot of anxiety, and just didn't really know what I was doing. And uh, finished, and the bartender was like, "Hey, that wasn't the worst that we've ever had. Here's $100." And as soon
Yeah.
as I got the $100, I was just like these tectonic plates, just like, and I
It
was like,
really happened. It's just funny. And like other musicians make money for like their life, and like you still don't think like I know other photographers just
mm,
make money doing photography. Other musicians do it, but like when it happens to you, it's like,
yeah,
shoot. Like,
hmm
well, hold on a second.
yeah. So the scalability of it started to just inch its way into my mind. I was like, well, I'm not doing this job that good at this construction job, and I was making like at what shook out to be like $100 a day. And then I went to this restaurant, and I had a lot more fun,
Yeah.
even though I was probably equally as competent at that atmosphere. But I realized that it was something that I was going to be able to progress, this thing that I ultimately cared about. And I just thought to myself, well, if I fill 5 days a week with these things, or five opportunities like this, then I can exceed what I'm making from this other job. And it, probably within the next 3 weeks, I like developed the conversation of exiting the position and filling in those opportunities at other places. So
Nice. When did you start like adding members, or is that not as much as like when there's different opportunities that kind of called for larger groups?
yeah,
Or is that way later in it?
yeah. Well, when I started performing out, it was in like a original context, and we had like a band, and it was like, this is the band, and every
Right.
gig we play is with
Yeah.
this band. And
It's these
yeah, and
songs.
we also have these interpersonal problems all the time. Those come
Yeah.
to the gig too, damn it.
Yeah.
And like
It
yeah,
just has to. It's part of it. It's part of the
yeah,
persona.
right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
So that
A
like
band isn't a band unless there's a problem.
yeah, well, we were a band in that case. And so I was used to that collaboration. And when I started to get into this other space, which was, performing, entertaining, I was entertaining people. These other experiences were what I would consider a show, and more of a showcase, whereas I have delineated things between what is a gig and what is a showcase or an experience, and there's a gray area in between for sure.
Mm.
But when I started to get into this entertainment and gig space, I realized like these other band members aren't going to be a good fit for that.
Yeah.
And I was able to not collaborate with people, like not many places that I was approaching, they were okay with me being solo. So I would say keeping things, all the moving parts, as small as possible does help with nimbleness and a clarity, and a quicker turnover to the point where you may be, going full time with something. Whereas uh, I imagine it's harder for somebody that plays trumpet, where they like need a rhythm section and
Or vocals.
yeah, or they need like somebody to be a chordal like landscape for them to dance over.
Right.
It's harder for somebody like that, and it's harder for a drummer because they can't go into a
Right.
restaurant and that type of thing that I know of and just do that.
That'd be a
There might be some
very.
unique
I was
restaurants
gonna
that
say that'd
just
be
want.
very interesting. Just the drummer
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
nothing else. Just
Does
like a
she
drum
have to?
line.
Huh?
Does she have to find her way out, or is she
Oh,
being pesky?
she's just trying to get attention.
Mm.
You just trying to get attention over there?
Attention's on me, lady.
Yeah, you're trying to
Easily.
take all the
How
attention.
many
Yeah.
lady
Knock
segments do I
over
have to
the
cut out of
camera.
these podcasts?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, a lot.
Um.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of gets into the realm of like getting things as small as you can in order to make a leap into doing something like that full time. I notice that people that are solo musicians, they sing and play piano, sing and play guitar, even upright bass. I, I I know there's instruments that I'm forgetting where maybe a vocal expression alongside of this other instrumentation thing,
Yeah.
or if they're just just playing piano or just playing guitar, they can find themselves getting into those full time spaces more easily than some other instruments. But uh, there are a lot of people that don't get into this gig space where they're out performing in restaurants and things like that. They completely surpass that or bypass it or exist on the outside of it and only perform at showcases, showcase style events where they're performing original music or they are, developing a project. So in a lot of ways, what I do as my full time like monetary exchange is, I would say, probably a little bit closer to somebody who's like a wedding photographer, whereas somebody else who is strictly their original like vision is the thing that they spend all their time on. There's a sharper curve, um, a longer duration before they ever reach um,
Yeah.
any financial gain from that.
No, that's a good way to put it. I never thought of it that way. It's like obviously wedding photographers do have a style in a sense, but like they're shooting a wedding,
Right.
and
Right.
it's you get the bride and the groom and the mom and dad and like whatever it is, and then obviously if you're just like an artistic or landscape photographer, then that's all on you
Hmm.
to get yourself out there and whatever it is. So that's I kind of understand what you mean by the two sides of it.
I mean, I think that is what you guys, I'm sure, also find in your other conversations, and then if you look for it, you can find that in everything, including like people that install
Yeah,
bathrooms.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Um, but that curve, the person that got paid, $30,000 for their time on a bathroom had to be an artist, you
yeah,
know,
Right.
whereas somebody who just installed one for $3,000 and it's all just like IKEA uh, like installments, then
yeah. More cookie cutter.
they're
Yeah,
making very much less, but the investment to time, yeah.
Well, and there's definitely a you know, what economy of scale, like,
Mhm.
people who are doing the cookie cutter one, they can do 50 of those things in a reasonably quick amount of time, right?
Yeah.
Because they just I'm going in, I'm doing it, I'm moving on. We're just doing a lot of these. It's the same thing every time. We're not worried about it. Then there's the artistic side of it where it's I'm going to show up and this is going to be specific. It's going to be unique. It's going to be different than the other
Hmm.
experiences. I'm going to have it catered to the specific area of whatever it is that I'm doing, and you're going
Yeah,
to be paid.
I spent 2 weeks like
Right.
and going back to the client being like, did you want
Right.
like
yeah.
this shade of sand or like
Right. Well, and then it's like you're going to get paid exponentially more, but you're only going to have 10 of those versus the 50 the other guy had.
Yeah, but your knees will work like a lot better later
Right.
on.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're still talking
Well,
about music, right?
yeah, man.
Yeah. I've
Well,
lost track. We're bathrooms and
yeah, well,
yeah,
in a just as that comparison, like I do look at myself in a lot of ways as somebody who's installing a bulk amount
Sure.
of
Yeah.
of bathrooms. But in some capacity, like there's a double-edged sword to that where I'm like, I'm doing events that are forgettable for people. I'm
Right.
background music for somebody. But it goes to like a very similar creative process of somebody that may I don't know if you've heard of the story of students that were in a pottery class. Uh, their assignment was to make one pot that was amazing,
Mm.
and I'm not sure, this was a university, a study, the class was the study. They asked one group, 50-50 split of the class, one group only needs to make one pot, and the entire class is going to be judged off of one pot, and the other class, the entire class is going to be judged off of one pot, but they are their assignment is to make, I think it was like I think it was like 300 pots a week. So basically, it doesn't matter how good these pots are, you just have to make 300 a week. And these other people, you just have to make the best pot ever.
Right.
And this 300 pots a week group where they were just like, yep, yep, that's a pot, that's a pot,
Yeah.
that's a pot, like 300 they went through. They were so good at it because of that level
The
of
repetition.
Whereas I know myself would probably be closer to the person that would be like, my art isn't ready yet. Like, I'm gonna hang in my basement.
Right.
Whereas
Yeah. I'm gonna
these,
get my looper pedal out.
yeah. Whereas these experiences force my type of, character into that space of needing to do it. And I'm sure some photographers do feel that way about, these real estate photo shoots or these wedding photo shoots or these menus for a restaurant. It's a gray area where you're like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get out and do this, and it will inform my other experience.
No, for
in
sure. I
those
mean, like I
ways.
can crank through a menu, shoot, put it out. I'll feel good about it. If I'm making like this or like the other documentary series thing, something I'm making for myself. I'm just gonna hold on to it for a while,
Mhm.
and maybe I'll just edit it like over a few months or something. That if it was something that I've done a million times before, I'll edit it and just be like, well, about a week, and it'll be good. And like, perfect. I'll just keep cranking those out. So I definitely, when all of a sudden you're shifting into like your own creative, and you're just like, wow, this is like 100% reflection of me. Like I need to like really be sure.
It's
Mhm.
way more vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable experience.
Mhm. Yeah, and because we have that reward system of the reward system of the financial aspect, then I think like a lot of times what the battle then becomes somebody that is, maybe not hyper specialized inside of this. Like my creative expression is all that I like do and think about, which is many of the musicians and photographers and bathroom installers that we admire.
I'm glad that we
Um,
locked that
Do
one
you
in.
have specific bathroom installers that you
This
this
admire?
Are
guy,
you
I
having your
just
house remodeled?
man.
Sorry.
No, I kept my train of thought in this space of, like I said, these people that we do admire that are very much in these hyper creative spaces, they commit to it. There's something like super admirable about it. When they finally do reach that level of return on their investment, it's it's oftentimes very like clear and as humans, I mean, we love seeing that type of thing.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we find ourselves in is when you do open yourself up to like, oh, I'm just gonna play these covers at this restaurant for $200. um, you open yourself up to that lack of clarity and that lack of long-term investment, and you maybe, on a Wednesday night, you may not be working on that documentary that you wanted to do, and you're, doing something that is ultimately much less of a wise investment of your young vital time towards like your when you look back on your life and you're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so glad I did that
Yeah. No.
restaurant gig versus, so we
Was it-
find ourselves like balancing those things, and depending on your needs, and in some cases, if I were to be really brutally honest, like my own integrity, I wane in my like ability to say no to these opportunities to make money rather than like make something that's more long lasting.
Mm.
That's a
Yeah.
pretty ruthless description though.
No, I think it's good. I think one of the things I always bring up to any person or any creative is always question. We asked people before too. You know, they argue if you're an artist, never give it away for free, never give it away for cheap. But I always err to the side, especially in the beginning, because you said you did the $100 job that your dad got you. I did the $50 job that was just a coincidence, just because it was my wife's client. Um, So I do disagree with that, but I want to see, like, what do you think? In the beginning, you got to show people what you can do somehow,
Mm-hmm.
because like even the idea in the corporate world of an unpaid internship exists, but nobody blinks an eye at that. Like so you're doing something for free to prove you can do it at first, and then you start to build that income. But what do you think in the beginning? Someone's just starting out; they need to get a gig somewhere. I mean, sometimes you take that $50 gig if you can get it, or you do the open mic night that might be free and
Yeah.
have your buddy come record it so you can show it to a bar and maybe get paid for it.
Yeah. What? Go ahead, Joel.
I was gonna say, or just pull your iPhone out and
What do you
So,
mean?
sit it next to you with you. I'm making fun of you a little bit.
Wait, what
Teasing
do
you.
I do?
When we play gigs, you put your iPhone out and you record your.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
I think it's
mean,
a great way to do it. I'm actually I actually do play in a band with Kevin, and
I
it's
set my iPhone out almost every show.
yeah,
So,
he
like,
does. I think it's a great idea actually, and it's a great way to get some content to market yourself, or like to get something out there where
yeah.
it doesn't have to be perfect, beautiful, well done, perfectly curated content. Especially in this day and age, like having content is sort of the king of marketing. It's like if you have content to get in front of people,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
not saying
and it's a
hire a
decent
production team, but if your
representation.
buddy's in the crowd of an open mic night,
Yeah,
he can film it.
I'm pulling us off the question a little bit, but yeah, that was
No, that was
So,
just to the point.
so one of the aspects of doing stuff for free that I think is important to separate is kind of doing those things that we enjoy for free.
Yeah,
Because actually one of the first experiences where I did something with an instrument and the universe dropped little pieces of like colored paper like in my hand, and that was just some exchange of like value where other people witnessed it and said, dope, here you go.
yeah.
Was performing on the street,
Oh,
like
nice.
street performing,
Yeah,
and that was like totally free. Like I
yeah,
went down, I was like, beautiful day, I want to play this guitar and have people walk by and give me their emotions,
yeah,
basically. Um, and I set out a hat because that was like, what you assume would be like the case,
yeah,
of the what I in my mind was what street performers did. And I did that at like outside of some like street fair in this place that I lived. And a friend of mine and I made like $150 by
That's
doing that.
that's awesome. Yeah,
Um, so I didn't expect to make anything. It was free. I've made, videos that I put online of just art that I wanted to make or re-represent, if it was in the form of a cover or that art that I wanted to represent of a personal expression, and a lot of those things I just consider intrinsically valuable.
yeah,
Um, but when you step into a gig space, I understand wanting to put bounds up um, to make sure that you're not underpaid. But when you're just beginning, like you said, you kind of have to let those go.
yeah.
yeah,
Well, and
You have to.
it's it's always conflicting, but you also don't know your value when you start out. Like it's hard to know your value and know the value of what you're doing
Mhm.
without a barometer for having experienced some range of that value. Um,
Well, it's an age thing too. I mean,
yeah,
because the longer you go without doing it, the more you know that like I could, instead of doing this, I could, go sell spray foam,
yeah,
or some other thing. If I were in real estate, it would be very hard for me to walk away from, 30 years of real estate or 20 years of real estate. And
right,
it's much easier to walk away from a year of real estate to pursue this thing because your value judgment is the ratio is much lower, you
right.
know.
yeah. That's good advice.
Well,
So starting sooner is
Yeah,
because like the longer you wait, the more you are gonna walk away from.
yeah, and your responsibilities develop over
well,
time too.
Mhm.
From
yeah,
if you're younger, yeah, if you don't have kids, maybe you just have you're sharing an apartment with a bunch of friends, so rent might be cheaper.
Yeah, or you're not talking to yourself into like, oh well, a 35-year-old can't start.
Oh
that was the
yeah,
point I was gonna make is you feel less rooted,
Yeah.
like, as you get older, and I think this is a little bit of an illusion that we put on ourselves, 'cause I mean, speaking personally, I've just kind of gone through it in the past year and a half, where you get this idea that once you hit a certain age, you're supposed to be established in something, you're supposed to be a certain thing, you're supposed to be at a certain place, and you sort of cut yourself off from a lot of options, and you don't consider that your options should be allowed in a certain way. So it is a lot easier when you're younger, even though it shouldn't be. It should be like at any age, you technically have the freedom, if you really want to pick up and do anything you want. It's and it's not gonna be necessarily, I mean, there's certain things that'll be harder to do, but the hard thing is just the mental capacity of doing it,
Yeah.
which isn't that different, in my opinion, from when I was 22 to 36. It was still hard as shit to just get up and do things because it's you still hit all the same roadblocks, all the same failures, all the same,
And you're
you know.
smarter now, and you have more resources as
I'm
far as
glad
like
I'm glad you
friends.
think that. Thank you.
Well, I can't imagine what you were like in your 20s, but I like you too much now to
Yeah,
think that I would like you back then.
that's fair. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, but yeah, I do think it is easier when you're younger to especially get into the mindset of not having a consistent paycheck because creative life, whether it's music or even just opening your own business or working for yourself in any capacity, really doesn't come with much of a consistent paycheck, and it takes a really different type of thinking. And I think if you start at a younger age and you're able to understand the inconsistency and plan for it, I think that makes it easier later in life to have the idea of, well, I can still change, I can still switch because I know how to deal with inconsistency.
I mean, if you wanted to pose it in a space of not value judgment, of like it would be harder, it would be better, it would, because I find myself doing that and being like, yeah, it would be better for you to start when you're younger and all that stuff. But at some capacity, if you wanted to use that age for somebody who's a little bit older, even a lot a bit older, if you wanted to use that and the responsibilities that you have as fuel in your tank, I think that there is space to do that because as humans that witness other people break away from this like rut that they've been in for 50 years of their lives or 60 years of their lives, and when he was 65 he totally changed his life.
I've
Like,
seen a few
we're
posts like that.
inspired by that
Yeah,
as well. It's just that takes a lot of belief in yourself,
yeah,
and in some ways it can be beneficial to utilize those things. I think about that for myself when I want to have a family in my future, and I want to be able to safely say like, yeah, I can, provide for
right,
these all these variables of family life. Like, it could be a value judgment to say like I need to work harder and all these things, and I might even say like, oh, maybe can I do music full time in this way, or some other way? Do I need to sell out and get some other job? But at some capacity, I could also recognize that having that fuel in my tank to like do these extra things are going to be the thing that push me to do the more longevity, the work that has a longer scope but a higher chance to benefit me in the long run and appease my human desire to create. Whereas because I don't have a kid, I don't have a family, I don't have as many responsibilities now. Maybe that's why I'm okay. Like, yeah, I'll go get it. You know,
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go do these gigs now because like I can pay my rent and like put a little bit of money aside and all that stuff. Because when you get to that age, your commitment to it, your belief to do it has to arise to that occasion. And somebody that's older and has more to lose, their belief may completely surpass mine in the span of
right,
6 months than mine did in this entire crescendo of like 20 years to get to that point, you know?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, well, before we got on the mic, sorry, I set the mics up, but I heard you say it, so I might phrase it wrong. But you're saying there was advice that even though you might not follow it right now, but advice you've always you want to give to people that ask you for
Mhm.
that coming up in the industry, because we've been talking a lot about people coming up in the industry.
Yeah.
So what's some of the advice, even if you don't follow it? Like I just talked about advice, I don't follow it. I give all my clients, and
Mhm.
we talked about this before we were recording.
Yeah.
So what kind of came to mind when we were talking about that?
Concrete advice that I follow myself that I can say would be good, is don't play music that you don't love. I don't like. I just if people ask for a cover of a song that I don't like, I just don't do it. I say like I don't know that song flat out.
Yeah.
Only play stuff that you love, and in a way, I don't really know how that would apply to like other mediums as much. Like, don't take a picture you don't think is cool. You
Yeah.
know, like
No, I
I
mean,
don't.
there's like edits and clients and whatever. I'm just
Yeah,
like, I just don't like doing this.
yeah.
Whatever to X, Y, and Z. There are genres within photography where like, and Megan, so my wife, she'll tell, she's like, I know you are not into this gig. She'll look at an edit and be like,
Yeah,
you can't send them that.
yeah,
And I'll go back through and I'll slow down and I'll make it right and I'll make it look good. But there's definitely times where she'll look at some of the edits before I send them in, and she's like, "You can't push that through. Like you were clearly disconnected from this job,
Mhm.
and you didn't put the focus in that you should have. So make it right." And,
Okay,
you
so
make it
that
right.
barrier
Yeah.
of I'm not really into this at all,
Yeah.
take that out and find whatever bounds that you have, and you're gonna step over those bounds sometimes. Whereas like I might get a gig offer and I'll be like, that honestly seems like it sucks, but like I'll try it. And sometimes they turn out to be great.
Yeah.
Like the name of the place will be like Pete's Rusty like Spoon, and you're just like, fuck.
Hopefully, that's not a real place.
It's
I
gotta be. I guarantee that's
Yeah.
someone's
Anyway,
name.
if this podcast gets big enough where people care to message them and tell them about this, then congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. That is now
we're reaching
that is the peak goal for this
Probably-
podcast one day.
probably
goal on
Tampa,
recording.
Florida. It's
Yeah.
probably in Tampa, Florida.
Well, it's
Our goal
whatever.
now is to
I'm not worried
piss
about
off
Florida.
Pete's Rusty Spoon
Yeah.
in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
That preconceived notion of like I'm not gonna like this, but
Mhm.
I'll do it, like
Yeah.
has yielded good situations. But all in all, I try not to do things that I don't like, and for songs, that's been one of the things.
Yeah.
Another aspect would be try to do it without drinking. Just do it without alcohol, and if you can do it without, like, if it's weed, that's one where I don't really find myself seeing too many people get stuck in those black holes of spinning with weed, because it doesn't take over your experience more and more as the night goes on,
Yeah.
in a way. But alcohol, I would say, really just do your best to get into these situations if you are a musician, not in just an entertainment space, but inside of a original music space.
Mm.
Keep a bound away from that. Give yourself a month where you do it without that.
Yeah.
And it's really going to help you out to not get a DUI. It's going to help you out to save money. It's going to help your health out in a lot of those ways. And even if you just do that month, then you can recognize, like, you can maybe do a little bit less than you did
Yeah.
before, and develop a healthy space around that.
Yeah. I think that's great advice too, because musicians especially have a reputation of drinking a lot
Mhm.
on gigs, especially bar gigs, because you're playing. I can't think of a music gig I've ever played where alcohol isn't available, and they're not giving you some sort of free alcohol to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's part of the. So I worked in my brother's restaurants for a minute, and I was booking some of the bands down in Columbus a long time ago.
Yeah.
But part of the negotiation wasn't just paying them; it was like, well, we also want a $200 bar tab.
Yeah.
As well. So it's even part of the contract.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which could be food.
Yeah, it could be food too.
But
yeah, absolutely.
it oftentimes
Yeah,
turns
it rarely
into
was, yeah.
lubrication.
Right.
And it can be. I've noticed some gigs where I'm like, oh man, I'm really just like locked up today. I'm not feeling loose.
Right.
And it's there for that. And the collective consciousness of the room, it can kind of be good to like hold up a drink and be like, cheers, everybody. And like that's there. But I would say challenge yourself to do it without the ability to say, cheers, everybody. I'm getting lit too, or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
relaxing like you are. Try it without. And like give that alternate muscle that you have to build up instead of that, to
Yeah.
a chance to grow.
Well, it's a good thought, because I mean, you're not going to get drunk at any other job. You're not going to go drinking, when you're working somewhere
Speak
else.
for yourself, but no, I'm
And
just kidding. If any
it-
client watches
yeah.
this,
And it is,
I thought about it immediately after I said it.
Not me.
Yeah, I am joking.
But it is this mindset of music. Well, I'm in a bar, I'm playing, but it's your job, it's your work. And there's also there's psychological impacts where if you're consistently drinking and you're getting drunk and getting good at an activity where you're consistently drinking or drunk while doing it, you tend to kind of hold on to that skill gain while drunk. And then when you're not drunk, it tends to become more difficult for your brain to access that same space.
Yeah, like you don't want to need it.
Right. And so there's a lot of benefits. I think that's a great advice. A lot of benefits to staying away from the alcohol, while you're playing. And it doesn't have to be all the time, but at least to know, like, you're being moderate, or you're not using it as a crutch to perform.
Yeah. That's one thing. That's probably the biggest piece of advice that I see peers with, and it's people that I don't even know at all, but I just like see them, maybe kind of struggling with that. And
Mm.
or I hear about like, oh, the last musician that was here got like fucking lit up.
Oh yeah.
Like so I try to, really I wish I could scream that at the rooftops. But that also deals with my own, past without like alcohol or like family or friends that I've had bad experiences with alcohol on. Yeah, man, I would say probably the other piece of advice, I guess, just with music would be to like find some sort of intrinsic value system that you have through these creations. If I do a lot of like other people's music, but I put my own like rhythmic timing to it, or my own try to develop your own voice through those things, which I definitely see inside of photography,
Oh yeah.
and I see obviously inside of stylistic choices of videography work, where you can tell the lighting and the tone and all of these things that people deal with, kind of they develop their own personal voice through those things. So I recommend that for musicians who do want to create their own sound. There are some musicians that nail it note for note, like replication of the original, and it's
Yeah.
just like, oh my god, everybody's like, I wanted to see that. Like I've always wanted somebody to like do that, and they'll be like great for wedding bands and great for cruise ships,
Yeah.
that type of thing. But if you develop your own personal style and sensibility with those things, then you can also develop a reward system for learning new songs, or a reward system of like, while I'm at this gig, I'm actually interested in performing it my way, rather
Yeah.
than a similar reward system where somebody may have of like, I really nailed it note for note this time. And personally, the reward system of originality over complete replication, I think, is something that I would suggest to a lot of people that are more creatively minded.
Yeah, there's some advice. Actually, I don't know if you told me it or somebody told me it, but like, if a writer is stuck, like they're trying to write and they can't write, to pick their favorite book or something that a writer they idolize,
Mm.
and write and copy their paragraph for paragraph. Just write it and just say
Whoa.
see what they wrote and then just write it, and it helps like train your brain a little bit to help like
Yeah.
push through the creative block.
Yeah.
And literally just
Huh.
copy the paragraph. Obviously, don't do anything with it, but just kind of like help you push through
Yeah.
that creative block.
That's crazy.
I've
You
heard
know,
I've heard similar things like that before. But
yeah,
it
I might
makes
have heard it from
sense.
you.
Like our brains are easily fooled. Like they're just tools. You can use them, in ways that'll, you can get the results you want. You just have to figure out the right way to do that. Like, oh, I want to be creative. Well, I'm going to do a creative thing so that my brain is just triggered to be in a creative space, and
Mm.
then you
Yeah.
can be creative.
There's a photographer I like, and I'm sure anyone listening that's a photographer in their 20s to 40s knows who I'm talking about. His name's Peter McKinnon.
Mm.
He's on YouTube. He's big, and I love his style. And I kind of every once in a while, if like I stop shooting for a little bit and I want to start shooting again, I'll just pick like a series.
He
It's
yawns.
good. Come on, dude.
I
We're
yawn,
almost there.
He
I don't
yawned
know.
while you were
I
talking.
yawn
Not
all the
me.
I'm
time.
fine.
It's
Forget
like
it. You start. I don't want to talk
it's
anymore.
yeah. It's like yeah.
Does
It's
he have like a style that's like
What's
that?
so no, so Peter McKinnon, he has like the specific style. I really like it, and the point of it is that like just like the writing thing, I just copy his photo.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't post it as like I totally thought of this and like nothing else. Like he like will have like there was one recently he had a knife and it looked really cool. It was like dark and like a grungier photo, and I was like, I'm just gonna copy that shot for shot, figure out how he did the lighting, figure out how he edited it, and like
Yeah.
just replicate it, and then it kind of gets you doing it again. Then you're like, all
Mhm.
right, now I'm gonna do for this client needs product shots, so now I'm ready to go now
Yeah.
in that same writing aspect.
right.
Interesting.
Well, kind of in this area, what what's your process for writing a song?
Yeah.
What gets you inspired, or what has inspired you, or what has like helped you to get into the right mindset to like write, your style of songs?
Man, that's not nearly as clear cut. I really don't I don't have any I don't have any advice on that personally,
Mm.
other than really just trying to be more articulate with your words. Try to think in more metaphors, and I think that helps. That can help inform your communication skills in general, and those are the types of things that have helped me to try to facilitate a bit more of a Try and think and communicate in metaphors. Try to understand uh, uh, more aspects of reality through different lenses.
Yeah.
And I would say listen to a lot of philosophy and things like that, and that can help you to maybe take a situation that has happened in very finite terms and draw a more um, draw a more I don't know how to explain it, but um, a story like atmosphere behind everyday occurrences. And I think that those types of things can allow people to write a compelling song
Mm.
because we experience stories more so than we experience um, or we connect with stories that people tell more so than like specific happenings, and we connect with those emotions more than like I'm trying to think of songs where somebody would explain like these minute details that like we may have never experienced, but they just convey the arc of either sadness or heartbreak or realization or inspiration in a way that we can get uh, we can connect with a lot better. But to be productive with it, like I'm very hit or miss with songwriting. At the same time, as I consider myself a full time musician, I, I have 30 songs, original songs, but I don't have like a Spotify playlist full of like thousands of listeners. I don't know how to get that out there just yet. I don't know how to consistently write and package things in such a way that people feel ready to accept that into their consciousness like just yet, but I am on my way to understanding those things, and I am performing music full time, so it's kind of you're talking to me in a space that's just I don't have a lot of advice for that,
Mm.
you know.
Well, but, even outside of, like, an advice area, like, it doesn't have to be like, "Here's how you can do it." It's more of like a, you know, what gets you wanting to write music, right? Like,
uh
I know you lived in a cabin in the woods for a while. Is that, like,
yeah.
were you more inspired to write music when you were in nature? Are you more inspired to write music with your fiancé? Are you more inspired to write music when you're alone?
New places, being in like a new room
Mm,
helps. Also being around family helps
mm,
because those are typically the archetypes that we like envelop ourselves with, like these the feeling of like brotherhood or fraternity that we love and have and want
yeah.
to appreciate, or that we desire and wish we had, or this like motherly or fatherly love that we wish we had or don't have, or whatever, those types of things. Or even significant others, obviously that's a big thing, so being around those people I think helps you to tap into a more collective experience that you can draw in a very physical way. I've written most songs around other people just by having like a guitar and being in the next room over,
Mm,
than I have been in a cabin in the woods by myself. I maybe have made some cool work, but I've not really written very many songs. So, I may have produced a cool video or whatever in that cabin in the woods alone time, but like I left that cabin in the woods to like write a song by a river,
mm,
or to collect these ideas in like on like somebody's birthday or whatever.
yeah.
So that would be the only like through line that I've seen in my ability to create and songwrite.
Who do you listen to most often?
I listen most often, like hour for hour, would be Bill Evans, piano player. But that's just because I put it on in the background. So it's going.
Yeah.
I would say I've listened to the band Wolfpack a lot,
Yeah.
and that
You've showed
group.
me Wolfpack.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, very good. Very cool production styles. I listen to them a lot. I listen to a lot of John Mayer as well. Um, because I like his melody lines and stuff like that. So I would like sing his music while I worked on things, and I actually don't like listening to podcasts while I like work on things. It like agitates me
Mm.
for some reason. It feels like I'm like solving a problem while I'm also like solving a problem.
Somebody's talking to you
Yeah,
while you're
yeah,
trying to work.
yeah,
You're like, oh, can you
yeah,
just give me a second? I'm
yeah,
working.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can't
But
pay attention to you right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
singing has been a way for me to be able to do that. So I've
Yeah.
listened to a lot of John Mayer. I've listened like very similar musicians to the style of music that I create has been, like Jack Johnson as well. I've listened to every single one of his albums like so much, and then the rest of it would all just be like cultural pillars like the Led Zeppelin, Creedence Clearwater Revival, a lot of Motown,
Mm.
um, Fleetwood Mac, like these things that have just that are a part of society now.
Yeah.
So
Nice. That's awesome. Um, what do you think of when someone says like, "Do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life"? I always love asking creators this. Do you
yeah,
do you think that holds up?
that was a quote that my stepdad told me, and I for sure have followed that. Um, at the behest of some of my other family members. They wish I would have a little bit more security.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I've seen some of my family members completely throw their eggs in the basket of security. And I definitely think I'm having more fun and loving what I do. Uh, so, yeah, but at the same time, I think you can you can come to a place of love with many things, whether or not no matter what is actually happening, the choice to love what you're doing is kind of a broader choice. It's something that you can apply to something that you might not actually thought you would love, or maybe something you even hated at some point. Like there are so many people, and we're also inspired to this by this as humans. Like we see people that are in prison, and they learn to love their existence inside of, even if they're wrongly convicted, like
Right.
to transcend the negative experiences of human life and all of that. I think I'm just waxing poetically.
No, it was good. I'm always curious. There's a lot of different answers to that question, especially people doing, what they love. They either stand by that quote or they don't. I definitely have had some people been like, "No, I work way harder now," and like, they'll say,
Yeah,
I had another great answer, which was, it's not that I work. I just have things to do. It's not like I have work to do. I
yeah,
have these things I need to do now, and it's just part of my life. Just things I need to do. And I thought that was a good one too. So
yeah,
I always like to hear a take on just like on that kind of
yeah,
saying that people, everyone hears it all the time, and you're just like, well, no, I feel like now I work so much harder now. Yeah, I don't know what you're
yeah.
talking about.
Well,
Just because
and
I
Well,
love it.
it's the motivation, right? You actually
Yeah,
want to do it. You're much more connected to it.
yeah, that's
and
it.
the thing is, like, if I truly loved what I did, then why would I seek to do anything else?
Yeah,
Right.
I actually fucking hate where I'm at right now, or else I wouldn't try to do other shit.
yeah.
Sorry if I swear.
No, that's
I
fine.
didn't know.
No, you can swear. Yeah,
I
I don't.
Anyway,
Yeah,
but
there's no restrictions on here. It's fine.
No.
Yeah.
so the yeah,
This isn't going to be on like YouTube Kids or anything.
the love for that's my demographic. Actually, I like musically that is definitely like people find my music to be very like family, like, oh,
Yeah,
sweet. This is just like
not coming to
groovy
they like
and
hardcore metal.
pleasing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Except when you drop the F bombs.
yeah. Well, there's
Cut
that
the whole
side of me
thing.
too. Yeah, that love and that hate for where we're at is
Yeah.
yeah. I only thought of just two other things about the advice.
Yeah.
Would be invest in great gear, like,
Mm.
and it doesn't even really necessarily need to be the most expensive, but just like really do a good job to try to figure out what that would be most applicable for what you do, and if there's an industry standard, just do that. Like, don't find out whether or not like experimenting with new things is your where your success and your power is, or if you would just gain more productivity from accepting the industry standard and using that. If
Yeah.
you're an experimental person and you're like creating something completely brand new, then like look into that. And if you are getting bogged down by like building new things, just like get the industry standard thing that actually has a lot of limitations and stick with that. Like
Mm.
It,
those have helped
so
many
in
situations.
in the just maybe you can give advice because in the photography world we can rent camera gear,
Mhm.
and in the beginning I didn't know that. I was like, how am I gonna? I have a gig coming up and I need lights, and I was like, I can't buy these lights, and then eventually I figured I can rent them. And same thing, if I don't know if I want this lens, I can rent it and try it. Is there something in the music world that falls into that same category of like maybe I need this, but I need to try it first?
Yeah, I mean, go to music shops and keep trying out different things, but that can, be a reward system that won't ultimately result in you creating anything either. You can just become a gear collector in some way, and a lot of
Yeah,
people, uh, you know, a lot of dentists will spend a lot of their money just collecting gear that they don't pay or play, and a lot of lawyers have some of the most expensive guitars in the world.
Yeah.
Um, I would say more on the lines of start to notice inside of your habits if you are if you're buying this thing or spending this money on something that has all these bells and whistles, and then at the end of the day you spend more time turning knobs than you do um like expressing yourself. I would say probably a good example of this would be GarageBand and Logic.
Mm.
If you are in we're recording the Logic right now, I love it, but I spend more time in GarageBand now because there's less to move around,
Right.
yeah,
and another aspect of that would be so I'm spending more time in there than looking at, "Well, this plugin has all these, like, features in it, I can mess with these." If I can lop all those off and, like, do this thing that's more, narrow focused, I'll do that. And then another explanation of that would be to get this amplifier that has all of these settings on it, or a Fender tube amplifier that when you hit the guitar chord, it is the same sonic palette that, like, all of these other songs were written on.
Right.
Now, if somebody that is pushing the edge of sonic, flexibility and, like, creating this brand new thing where they, like, need this compressor and this reverb and this, like, space, that spectrum, like, effect, all this stuff,
yeah,
then their power is inside of that, but then the person that picks up the same Martin Dreadnought and plays with the exact same palette, as somebody drawing a portrait with a number two pencil versus somebody that's on an iPad Air, creating
Yeah.
this, like,
It's a great analogy.
find out where your weakness is, and then find out where your strength is just for yourself. Don't even look at other people for that, but just like in yourself and realize like, oh, I created a song because I only had the acoustic guitar, or I created this amazing soundscape because I had all this, like, in at some capacity, I guess we can still exist in those areas, but
Well,
yeah,
I think that's really good advice because it's human nature to live in this comparative world, right? Where you're just comparing yourself to everybody else. And am I getting as many followers or as many people showing up to my gigs, or am I playing as fast or as loud, or is my tone, and it doesn't really matter. What really matters is how you feel about your improvement and your comparison to yourself and your
mhm,
journey, and whether or not you like the improvements you've made upon what you're doing. And sometimes like envy and comparative, ness can be good because it'll motivate us to get to that next level where someone else might already be. But ultimately, that comparative nature can be really toxic because it can cause us to never feel like we're quite good enough when in reality, we probably are. We're probably doing just fine. And we
mhm,
probably need to worry about where we are and being grateful and happy and joyful and peaceful with the, creations that we're doing. And if those creations are in line with us and with our, idea of what our life should be.
mhm.
Um, so I think it's awesome advice to say like, hey, find your lane, stay in your lane, and compare to yourself. Like compare to you yesterday, not, you know, John Mayer last year.
Yeah, well, I think of it more in terms of, like dubstep.
Sure.
Like, we'd be lying to ourselves if we said, like, as musicians or as creators, we didn't wanna be the person that, like, was the forefront of this brand new thing that was on the crescendo of technology and human creativity, and just, like, it all came into place to just be like, and that was just the time that I was coming up in, but somebody else was, it was disco for them, or it
Right.
was like
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
it
new style.
yeah, or it was the first time a fuzz like pedal was plugged into like an amplifier, and Jimi Hendrix like created this new thing. Like we all want to be that, but it's, you can find creativity inside of experimentation, and then also you don't you'll find it's a gray area, but like if you want to start to develop the themes of like, I am an experimenter, I'm going into the realm of new, and I'm all, you are also living in the land of preservation, and people can live completely in the land of preservation and
Sure.
recreation of conservation of themes, whether it's any style of art, and like an entire film, a movie will become famous just because it could be shot on film now, and they were like, "Wow, oh my god, it's shot on film." Like analog film,
Yeah.
like
Well,
it
who shot on that
Yeah, it's
weird
vintage.
format recently too? Someone did that.
I
It
don't
was
know, but I know that it happened.
yeah, it was a different format, and like certain theaters were showing it, and it was a big deal at oh my god, that doesn't matter. It'll come to me later. But yeah,
Yeah,
it recently happened.
the
It
Well,
preservation is
was it Tarantino? It was probably him. He
the
always does that
that
stuff.
makes
preservation
sense.
is the
Yeah.
experimentation.
Yeah.
Well, but, also, I think I think that kinda goes in line with what I'm saying too, like,
Mm,
you know, just because you're gonna be an experimenter who wants to get the newest gear, you know, you probably shouldn't compare to the guy who's trying to be the acoustic
yeah,
player, right? You shouldn't be trying to compare to someone who's not doing what you're doing. You should, especially in a creative sense, you should be getting your voice heard and your voice like, you know, honed in and your voice kind of figured out. Not necessarily, I mean, at a certain point, especially early on, you have to go through the experience of like trying other people's voice on. You're gonna kind of go through this
Yeah.
weird place of, I'm gonna try and be all these other people, but at some point you're gonna start to figure out your voice, and you should stick with that. Like, don't worry about once you find some degree of comfort in your voice, you should lean in on that and just compare to how you feel that your voice is being developed.
Yeah. What was your
Because like you can take an acoustic guitar and do shit that people probably still haven't figured out how to
yeah,
do yet.
yeah,
There's still a creative edge, somewhere in the world of preservation of styles.
yeah,
Whether that's like going back and recreating like things in a new way that isn't being done currently, or finding some kind of like new direction for it. But I think it's a great idea to think about, worrying about what your voice really is.
other piece of advice that I don't necessarily need to say for a large group of the population, which would be like younger people, younger than me. I'm 30 now, so that is a lot of people that are stepping into this creative range that probably already have a mindset of this, but just start making the real world appear to be, start developing a sense for getting what is happening in the real world to happen on a screen, which would be basically like always be recording, like that a sense of just like get it all, edit
Mhm.
it later.
yeah.
So when you are purchasing gear and when you are doing those things, like one of the easiest things that I've done is like I went out and bought an adapter that goes from my mixer to my phone, and it automatically just like the audio goes right in. So when I'm playing a show, I could record the audio from the mixer and the video from the room, and just having the idea to make that easy allows for the possibility for me to recreate what is happening here in the real world onto a space that could be preserved in basically the cloud,
Yeah.
but also shared for the experience of not just the 35 people that were in this experience. Um, it can, then be shared out to everybody else. So just always, if you are getting gear and doing those things, like try to think is like, how easy can I make this?
Yeah.
What's the easiest way for me
That
to do this?
break down that barrier to entry for
Yeah,
sure.
basically,
Yeah.
yeah, making that barrier super thin. So it's so thin that like you just have to do it,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
Because more and more people are looking at screens. I go out and I don't even know if this like way of socializing is necessarily going to be the preferred method or the allowed method, depending on like the way things like we experienced lockdowns at some point, so people didn't even have the preference to see live music. So
Yeah.
the ability to the ability to transcend the real world to the that technological space is, I just think that something that everybody should have, and mostly musicians as well, because when you create a photo now, it is digital.
Yep.
When you make video, it's for a digital format. But many people are out there recording or playing music up into the air, and the beauty of it is when it goes into the air and the reverb and the decay of their voice and their instrument, as soon as it ends, it ends.
Yeah.
Um, there's beauty in that, but maybe there's a lot of room for people, and this is advice that I don't take myself just yet super well, is to like capture that
Mhm.
as well,
Yeah.
and have that sensibility. So that's the only other that was the piece of advice that I don't take, that I would say
Nice. Yeah, I
put
like it.
out there.
Well, thank
Well,
you for giving us your time. We appreciate it. Where can people find you?
You just type in Kevin Sing Songs, like at Kevin Sing Songs, .com, or Facebook or Instagram. Just that tag is the way to find me.
Awesome. You got anything else?
or his QR codes at his
Yeah,
shows.
yeah,
Yeah, that was smart.
yeah,
Smart.
yeah. Kevin Koa would be the artist name. I think I only have 2 songs on Spotify right now, which is not enough for a full-time musician that considers himself creative, but um, it's a start. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening, and check us out at iamacreatorpodcast.com. If you want to jump on there and submit a form and maybe be on our podcast, let us know why. We mentioned this in the last one. If you have a friend that's creative and you want to submit them, and we'll surprise them with an email, that'd be pretty awesome too. We're doing this in person, so we're fortunate enough to have the cameras here, so you can catch us on YouTube if you want to see the video of it. But we'll do it remotely too. So if there's anybody wherever they are, we're happy to do it remote and talk to them. Catch you in the next one.